Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Retro vs. Remake. I know it's been a while. I don't post them videos on this channel too often. That's because I have been posting them on the Retro vs. Remake YouTube channel. Thanks to everybody that followed us there. We're so close to being able to change the URL, so we just need a few more of you guys to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then I can just change it to youtube.com/Retro vs. Remake. So I'd appreciate if you guys follow us there, and you're gonna want to follow us there because we started filming finally. So now it's not gonna just be an audio podcast. There'll be video, and we might put some images on. I'm not gonna really get too crazy with the editing for those videos. It's mostly just the podcast. I'm gonna focus on the tight editing. I might edit out a few areas where we kind of stop talking and figure out what we're gonna do next. But for the most part, it's going to be pretty much unedited. So you can start seeing us live soon, or you can start seeing us soon. And the first episode that we did is actually a video game movie. I don't know, there's not too many video game remakes or reboots out there, so maybe you guys can figure it out. So if you're subscribed to us on there, you're going to see us live. Yeah, and also check us out on any of the other social media things below if you want to follow us: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Put links to everything below. This episode 7, Point Break, this is a pretty fun episode. Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze in that original Point Break. Great movie. How is that remake? Well, there's only one way to find out, right? Let us know how you feel about this. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Do you like either Point Break? Let us know. Alright? Just follow us on that YouTube channel, and soon you'll actually be able to see us interacting with each other. That'll be pretty cool. Alright guys, take it easy. Later. Uncatchable criminals, an undercover FBI agent, surfing? All this can only mean one thing. We're comparing Point Break on this episode of Retro vs. Remake.
I'm Reggie Parker.
And I'm Dan Bulick. Welcome to
Retro vs. Remake,
the podcast where we discuss films and their remakes. Today's episode is Point Break. So the original Point Break was made in 1991, starring Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves, Gary Busey, Lori Petty, and John C. McGinley. Directed by Catherine Bigelow. Screenplay by W. Peter Iliff. It's written by this W. Peter Iliff, but I looked it up, and Catherine Bigelow did work on it. And she also had her husband work on it, who everybody might know as the king of the world, James Cameron. So James Cameron had his hand in the screenplay of this script. And the music is by Mark Isham. Point Break 2015, starring Edgar Ramirez, Luke Bracey, Teresa Palmer, Delroy Lindo, and Ray Winstone. Screenplay by Kurt Wimmer. We've actually done one of his movies, Total Recall remake, so keep that in the back of your mind. And music by Tom Holkenborg. Okay, so Reggie, what is your first experience with these Point Break movies?
Let's see. Point Break definitely feels like the college days, sitting out in the dorms, smoking a doob, drinking some beers, and watching them with my best bros. Quoting all the quotables. That's how I remember the first Point Break. And the second one, I saw the trailer and said, I'm not watching that. And, apparently I was wrong.
Sorry to make you go through that. My first experience with the first movie, it was one of the first videos I remember renting as a kid. And I vividly remember it because it was one of the first movies I ever saw with nudity. So yes, as a little, I want to say 6, 7-year-old, I was absolutely rewinding the raid scene just for that nudity. Burned into my memories, at least.
That is an interesting way to be introduced to nudity.
So I remember watching it a lot as a kid, not just for the nudity, and thinking that this movie was okay, but there was definitely something a little weird with it. And I remember definitely being confused by that ending, which we'll definitely get into. And the remake, yeah, like you, I saw a trailer for it and said, I don't need to see that. But here we are.
Life takes you weird places, Dan, and we watched the Point Break remake.
These films are kind of different, so I definitely want to get into this discussion, but let's go over a quick synopsis. So, crimes are being committed. Crimes involving lots of money. Johnny Utah is a fresh recruit for the FBI. The group committing the crime seems to be involved with extreme sports, like surfing.
With the help of his partner Pappas, Johnny goes undercover as a surfer and find the criminals. He meets Bodhi, who is somewhat of a spiritual mentor and the leader of one of the groups. He also meets a would-be love interest. After bonding with this group for a while, Johnny realizes they're the criminals, and things come to a head. Utah and the FBI try in vain to stop Bodhi and his group from committing crimes. And even though members of Bodhi's group die off, he ultimately gets away. Months later, realizing Bodhi can't resist the largest wave, Utah finds Bodhi. Utah plans on arresting Bodhi, but he lets him go to surf instead. Bodhi then rides his biggest and last wave. The end. Okay, so that's a very broad, vague synopsis because these are two very different films, especially with the central plot. So maybe we should start there with our comparison.
Yeah, so major plot differences. I mean, one that jumps out to me from the beginning is the Johnny Utah background. Keanu Reeves' version of Johnny Utah is an ex-NCAA football player. Pretty good one. He's like a national champion football player. The other guy is some vaguely extreme sports guy.
He's a YouTube star, so something I envy about him.
It's awesome. We get introduced to the remake Johnny Utah mid it was like motorcycle, like he's on a moto bike, like about to do some extreme riding. That's our intro.
It's different, but I think maybe we should focus on like the major difference is like when you think of Point Break, everybody thinks of one sport in particular, and that's surfing. So you think a Point Break remake would have surfing as its central focus too, but it's not. We have several different extreme sports, all under the guise of this challenge called the Ozaki 8. So let's talk about surfing versus the Ozaki 8.
Yeah. Surfing, I think it keeps you focused as an audience on one thing. These guys are surfers, and as extreme as it is, Johnny Utah only needs to learn one sport. So yes, Keanu Reeves isn't great at surfing at first, but he's an athlete and he figures it out pretty quickly. I like it. It's a California-based movie. It's all about the sun, the babes, and these super cool guys that march to the beat of their own drum. Whereas this Ozaki 8 thing, the movie's really trying to explain to you what a poly athlete is. And I guess it's just like an extreme athlete that does multiple sports. So they focus on doing everything, whether it's base jumping, surfing, MotoGP. They wear wingsuits. These guys are jacks of all trades. For me, I think it makes the movie feel a little unfocused, especially when you're talking about a Point Break remake where you're kind of expecting mostly surfing and there's not really that much.
And not only are the sports completely diverse and everywhere, but also our locations are everywhere. The original, we have our surfing, we're all in LA, right? We're just staying there. Okay, I know where I am. But with the Ozaki 8, since it's sort of environmentally based, we have to go to these different locations, and you can't just stay in one place. We're going all over the world for some of these challenges. It's a little disorienting in that way, because sometimes you just don't even know where you are at certain points in the movie. So that could be a little confusing.
Yeah, I gave up on knowing exactly where they were at any given time. Delroy Lindo, who I'm a huge fan of, he says it quite a bit, but these are multinational targets that these guys are affecting. So Bodhi's crew is based out of the United States, but he's committing crimes everywhere, and that's why the FBI is involved in this particular scenario. The only location I can kind of remember is when they specifically said they were going to Venezuela. That was like the one time sort of knew where they were, but only for a few minutes because I'm pretty sure they switched locations pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, I think that was more towards the end of the movie. I think the bulk of the movie takes place in France, right?
Yeah.
I think they go to France for the waves, and then I think they're on the French part in the Alps. I don't know.
Well, that movie, another major plot point is the motivation for the crime gang. Whereas Patrick Swayze's ex-president crew, they're knocking over banks because they need money to keep this surfer lifestyle going. The remake ex-presidents, if that's even really what they're called, the remake criminals are being funded by this like ultra-rich French guy, and they're all basically doing this sort of endless party thing, so they don't have the same monetary motivation, which I would say are the big plot difference between the two films.
Their motivations are more spiritual, I would say. Wait, before we get there, I want to get back to comparing surfing to the Ozaki 8 and what I thought. Yeah. So, like you said before, surfing makes sense, gives you focus. Guy doesn't know how to surf, has to learn how to surf. I get it. I could follow that. But then you have this guy who is a dirt bike guy or some type of extreme sports guy with a bike, and now he has to do all these different sports. He has to surf. He has to climb mountains. He has to wingsuit jump. While it's cool to visually see, I don't know. I couldn't get into it as much because I guess the motivation for doing all these different things was not entirely clear. Like, still at the end of the movie, I was still like, why are we doing exactly these things? I know it's supposed to be this Ozaki 8 thing, but the Ozaki 8 just isn't as interesting as guys robbing banks for money. It doesn't make as much sense to me.
Yeah, guys robbing banks, it's succinct. We know exactly what they're trying to do at any given time. The Ozaki 8 challenges, they explain them, but there's not really crimes connected to each challenge. It's more about the actual extreme challenge than what they're going to get out of it. So, it's at some point they're after diamonds. Other points it's, gold, and they launch money into the air at one point. It's not really apparent what their end game is other than, I guess, basically they're eco-terrorists. And like you said, I prefer the bank robbing scenes because they're actually shot really well, like the ex-president's mask. They have a whole shtick, and that's actually a big part of what people remember about the movie Point Break. So when you get away from the bank robbing and you start moving into these sort of vague terroristic plots, like you said, I can't get into it either.
They're doing these extreme sports, but they're not related to the robberies. They do the extreme sport thing, and then they have to do something called giving back. That's where the robberies come into play. And the reason for doing the sport is to sort of give back to the earth because we've taken so much. So by doing the extreme sport, they're connecting with the earth, but they're still taking away at the same time, apparently. So they need to do something in addition to give back. And for some reason, it has to be big crime. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I guess my interpretation of it was that they had these like sort of crime sequences built around their want to achieve these very dangerous stunts. And actually, I'm getting lost actually trying to think about it. Yeah, you're right. Like they go and they are generally disruptive, and it's a little hokey, like dropping pounds of money off in like these like desolate villages and things like that. I guess they're trying to sort of shake up the global wealth structure and give back to the poor. They're kind of like these Robin Hood type characters. But also, that's not even really their main motivation, like you said. Like, it's really their own spirituality that they're going for. And they found that the way to do that is through, pushing themselves to the limit, in this movie, as they would say, to the point break.
Yeah, Point Break in this movie is sort of like Breaking Point in the remake, as opposed to the original where Point Break is a point where the waves hit like an underwater, say, mountain or so the waves crash. It's completely different, and I guess it's fitting because it's a completely different film. It's definitely not what you would think of when you think of Point Break.
Well, yeah, I'm with you because we saw the original movie. We've associated this Swayze, Keanu Reeves movie to surfing and bank robbing. And we're like, okay, so we're going to do a remake. You're going to assume that there's going to be surfing and bank robbing. And there's really not much of either in the film. So, we just are mostly being introduced to this concept of poly extreme athletes. And, we're going from venue to venue. And like you said, both of us watch the movies and we're pretty competent movie goers and watchers. And I can't really tell you what their plan was.
I'm going to show my hand here a little early. As I was watching the remake, it just occurred to me, I don't think this was originally supposed to be called Point Break. I think there was elements of it. Somebody saw surfing in it and was like, you know what? In order for this to make more money, I bet if we make surfing a little more of a focus in the end and kind of rename some of the characters, we can call this Point Break and get a few more butts and seats. So honestly, I think that's what they did because this has really nothing to do with the original in terms of plot. Sure, you have some of the character names are the same and some things are like tweaked here and there. But generally, I feel like somebody was like, it'd be cool if some extreme sports were done for robberies. And then somebody else was like, well, you know what? Why don't we just call it Point Break and we can get a few more dollars? I think that's what happened here because it has nothing to do with the original.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at it, it seems like it was probably a film based on extreme sports. It seemed like a high-budget film, and like you said, if you're going to get your money back on something like that, most of us really, as American moviegoers, don't particularly care about extreme sports enough to go see an entire film about it. So by calling it Point Break, it brings you into it. I mean, if you look at the Point Break elements, they truly do look like reshoots. Like when they're first introduced to ex-presidents, it's just kind of guys on motorcycles going through like a bank or like some sort of jewelry store, and their helmets have presents on them.
You don't even see it. They're watching it on a monitor, so you're watching it through a monitor. You're not actually seeing it happen too.
Right.
So it could have easily been reshot.
Absolutely. There's like a scene or two of Johnny Utah at like the FBI Academy. I mean, when you really think about the first movie, you get that Keanu Reeves character is conflicted because he's living in both worlds. Like, he's going back to the FBI and he's having troubles at work with the Bureau, but he's also getting connected to these guys. So you see the duality of his experience, the professional life where he's supposed to be this agent, and then his undercover life. And they interact quite a bit, and that's an underlying theme of the movie. This one, yeah, he's in the FBI, but you might as well forget about it because he never checks in, really, other than a few scenes. And I don't even think, other than the one time where he pulls out his badge and gun, there's not really any other time where it actually seems like he's in the FBI.
No, it doesn't at all. In the original, you have Johnny Utah and his partner Pappas, who's in there a lot, and there's a lot of interaction between the two of them. In the remake, Pappas is barely in it. He's in it, but he definitely feels like a shoehorned in. He's never in any of the action sequences. He's always like after the fact and just says like a couple of things to Johnny, and then he's gone again. And I was just like, why doesn't he ever join him through any of these missions? Probably because it was reshot and we had to throw this character in.
I'm 100% with you. Like, I think you're right that to even start to really jump into comparison for us, you had to make that point. And you can sort of tell the way the movie's shot that. I mean, like, look at that big climatic scene where they're rock climbing. There's a rock climbing chase. It doesn't actually make sense if his end goal is to just arrest this guy. Because there's, like, a lot of different ways you could arrest this guy other than chasing him, like, on foot through extreme challenges. Like, it makes zero sense. There's no backup. The FBI doesn't show up. I mean, you think that, in the first film, Dr. Cox is pissed off all the time, and he's like, bring me evidence, bring me leads, and like there's no FBI tension in this movie. It's just not the same.
It's such an afterthought, the FBI stuff. You kind of forget about it after a while because he has so little interaction with the actual FBI. It's like he's off for days and he doesn't even report to anybody. In the original, he was so much interaction with his boss, even with other competitive FBI agents. There's a great back and forth with them, but it's completely missing in the remake, which strengthens the theory that these are probably all reshot after the fact, that they decided to call it Point Break.
There's a scene, now that we're talking about this, in the remake, there's a scene where he gets out of the FBI Academy, and who is it? I think it's Delroy Lindo is talking to him, he's calling him Utah, and he's like, oh no, Utah is just like a silly nickname they gave me, my name's Bingham. It's like, maybe the character's name was Bingham or something like that in the original film. There's a lot of little, not that subtle hints that this was not originally a Point Break film.
Yeah, and that whole FBI sequence you're talking about, that's in the opening credits. That could have easily just been like reshot, added, just hey, he's an FBI, just like the original, right?
Yeah, because I mean, even if you look at it, his hair is kind of different.
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that.
And maybe it's just slicked back to be, make it look like he's more buttoned up. But yeah, I think the reshoot happened here, if I had to guess.
There could be deleted scenes where they call him Brigham, and then they just got rid of him. It's like, it's too confusing. But reshoot and have everybody call him Utah.
For me, I guess a nice way to sort of segue here is to talk about what actually makes Point Break Point Break. The opening sequence of the original movie is very focused on the two people that are going to be your main focus point going on. You see Swayze's character surfing. You see Johnny Utah at the FBI Academy. They're both studs in their own way. That's the way everything's shot. Like, you see Keanu in the rain cocking a shotgun, thumbs up. It's pretty over the top.
It was ridiculous. He's sort of training. He's not an FBI agent yet. I guess he's doing one of the tests, and he's at a shooting range, and he's shooting all the targets, and then some guy's testing him. He's like, 100% Utah, and then Keanu Reeves just gives him this grin and thumbs up that is just so over-the-top 90s cheesy, and you're just like, okay, that's the kind of movie it's going to be. You're immediately like, all right, I don't have my expectations too high about the drama. This is where we are. Good to know. Thanks, movie.
Yeah, the movie does that, and then it pretty quickly introduces you to Gary Busey. So it's like, all right, I'm in for a ride. So I just think that the original does so many things to make it a more endearing film. It's more character based. Like, you really are seeing the dynamics of what makes Johnny Utah and Bodhi sort of tick. What their actual drive and motivation for the things that they're doing are. The love interest in the first film actually matters. You know, I think Lori Petty does a great job of playing the love interest, and she's not only his intro to that world because she teaches him how to surf. She's our intro to like the surf world too. So as he's getting this romantic relationship as an audience, we're also learning about surfing the same time as he is. Like, he's not already this extreme action star. He's a kind of a regular, well, not really a regular guy. He's an extraordinary athlete, but he's more or less just like the rest of us when it comes to surfing.
Yeah, so it's a great introduction because if you're not familiar with surfing, you kind of slowly are eased into it. It's not just like 0 to 90. You know, he sucks at surfing. He has to learn surfing, so we kind of learn about it. We learned some weird philosophies through Bodhi and his group. But, you know, you're slowly introduced to the world of surfing. It's easy. The other movie, though, you don't get introduced to anything. It just happens right away. It's like, okay, now we're going to do this. Now we're going to do that. You don't get slowly eased into anything. And then by the time you could finally like grasp what's happening, it's already done. It's so fast in how they introduce all the extreme sports in the remake. And it hurts. It hurts the movie because I'm not invested when they do these different things.
Yeah.
But I can get invested when I see Keanu Reeves finally riding a wave after he's been training like for half the movie.
Yeah. I agree. I think that Keanu Reeves, like, you see this progression where he's really bad at surfing. And it's never really like he got that good. He was capable enough to hang with the crew, but it wasn't like he was the best surfer because he only had a month really to learn. This other film, though, like, it really is describing extreme sports. And, you know, there's a spirituality in Patrick Swayze's Bodhi, but like everything has to do with spirituality with these guys. Like, hey, how do you use this wingsuit? Oh, you got to feel the wind, bro. Like, wait a minute. Where's the chute? Like, how does everything work? Like, it doesn't matter. You just jump into some of the most dangerous things you could do as a human being. You're like, hey, we're just going to free solo like El Capitan. And if you don't know how to, just believe in yourself, bro. And it's insane.
There's this invisible line that they have to follow, which I didn't really pick up till almost the end of the movie. And they kind of show it during the closing credits, all the lines that they're following. Other than that, I don't know how they're doing what they're doing without having done it before, right?
Yeah.
Wingsuit jumping the distance they did without dying and have never done it before. That's either some incredible luck that they got there, or they're just naturally talented.
I mean, you're talking about things that would take years and years of training and experience for. You know, in the original Point Break, more or less anybody could go like skydiving. You know, like there's a lot of everyday people that do it all the time. It's not that crazy, but a wingsuit, that's years. Like, it's almost as rigorous as becoming a pilot. There's a lot of technical stuff that you need to know about draft and wind, turbulence and stuff like that. And it's insane to think that, hey man, just do it, bro. Feel the line.
Yeah, it takes like, I was reading what the stuntmen did, because all the stunts are real. I want to give the movie credit there. All the extreme stunts are real. Hired professionals who worked years mastering each of these extreme sports. And in order for them to get to that level to film that wingsuit, they had to do so much skydiving out of planes and just so much practice. And for these guys, especially Utah, who's like, have you ever done this before? Never without a parachute. Like, for him to be doing this like his first time, it's like, where's the payoff? Okay, he did it. That's great. But like, there was no buildup. There was no, like, he didn't even show any fear or anything when he did any of these things.
Yeah.
When he did it, it was just done. And I didn't feel anything emotionally about any of his accomplishments in any of these extreme sports.
Yeah, I think because they're jumping from sport to sport with not really a lot of tangible explanation of just how insane the thing you're seeing is. Like you're saying, there's no payoff there. There's a line where the Bodhi in the remake says that you got more balls than talent. Maybe that's why you were so good. And it's like, yeah, this guy is pretty much just a reckless dude who isn't afraid to do insane things, but that's really not good enough. Because you see Bodhi's crew throughout a lot of these challenges slowly, like, instead of getting shot by FBI agents, like, I don't know, a movie about the FBI and criminals might do, they all just kind of keep getting killed off doing extreme sports until there's really only Bodhi left. And that's his crew that he's been running with for years. And they're all, like, well-versed and trained and they're vetted. And this guy they just met for, like, and again, the movie introduces a timeline. We're talking about 2 weeks.
It is very narrow window.
Could you imagine doing 8 of the most extreme challenges known to man in 2 years without planning? It's impossible, and it actually takes you out of the movie.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I mean, just to come full circle, focusing on surfing, I can buy it. after a month, a guy who was a college quarterback, yeah, he's probably pretty athletic. Maybe he could learn how to surf reasonably well in a few weeks. All right, I'm buying it. There's nothing else the movie requires from me in terms of his athletic ability, so it's not a distraction like this remake is.
I have a feeling the original script had nothing to do with the FBI, and they probably just focused on these Ozaki 8 challenges, and they probably did go into detail about like how each one works and like how much work you have to actually put in to train for it. And I think it would have served the movie better had they probably stuck with that. But instead, they put in this FBI thing, and so it took away from the actual challenges. So instead of giving us focus on either just the sports or staying true to the movie, it's so spread out. Everything's so spread thin, and you really don't care about anything. They didn't put enough time into it.
Yeah, I know we've been saying it, but this is clearly was intended to be a movie about extreme sports, and I think we said it. They shoehorned this in, which is unfortunate because Point Break, for me, if you're going to do a remake, there's so many things that you could have focused on that they're off the table. So, I think they did a disservice by just taking another movie, putting a few Point Break references in there, and then saying that's the Point Break remake. It's insane.
Where do we go from there?
I wonder if they like the movie.
Do we need to give our final verdict now?
Nah, we should definitely, because the original movie, I think at this point we can kind of focus on, because it's so character driven that we can talk about sort of like the comparison between, the characters. To me, the main reason Point Break works is Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves. You film this with 2 other actors, this is potentially a dud. But Swayze and Reeves give us just this insanely bro-y. Honestly, I know Lori Petty's a love interest, but I argue that those two are in a more substantial relationship. They get really close as friends. And, you got this 90s surfer lingo. Hey, it's Keanu Reeves. And if you're not careful, you're going to be fish food, bro. I don't know. There's just a lot of fun that's happening there.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves, this is one of his early starring roles. This is after the first Bill and Ted. So he's still not a great actor. I don't know where to go with that. But, he's definitely still in his, bro face. Whoa.
Yeah. Pretty
much the same character. Just now he's an FBI agent. And he's definitely interesting to watch, to say the least.
Yeah.
Some of his deliveries are just a little flat. Just pure Keanu. And it's like, you can enjoy it, though, because at least he's consistent with it, And the plot is pretty absurd in itself. These ex-presidents who are the mastermind bank robbers, but they also love surfing, dude. To have Keanu as your lead lets you know that you don't have to take it too seriously. You can have some fun here.
Right.
And then you have this other guy who I'd never heard of, Luke Bracey. Had you ever seen him in anything?
I'm not familiar with the actor.
No. And he does Johnny Utah, and I don't know, it's just not really memorable. Nothing really stood out.
No, I mean, he's a guy, I get it. I buy him as an extreme athlete, but that's not what I'm looking for from Johnny Utah. Johnny Utah is this kind of all-American dude. He's cocky, he's extremely confident in himself, but he's also, unfortunately, he's Keanu Reeves, and there is nobody in the world that acts like Keanu Reeves. So, unfortunately, it'd be very difficult to replicate that iconic character. I mean, just the scenes where he brings his surfboard to work, and he's talking shit to everybody. He's late to his own raid, you get a feeling from the character because they actually let the characters star in the movie as opposed to the action.
Yeah, and he's having a little bit of fun there. Like you said, he's kind of a dick sometimes. He's cracking jokes. He's late for his own raid. Johnny Utah in the remake, not that guy. Not cracking jokes, or maybe he's cracking jokes. I wasn't laughing. It definitely doesn't look like he's having that much fun, that's for sure.
I truly can't remember a line that he said, other than freeze FBI. I think that's the only thing I remember from Johnny Utah. The Bodhi in the remake, a little bit more memorable. I think he sort of captures a little bit of that Swayze spirit. Swayze's spirituality, to me, gets sort of peppered in throughout the movie, and by the end you realize that that's his whole credo, more or less. But he's doing kung fu, he's doing karate and fights, and he talks about spirituality and feeling the waves. And that's one of the few consistencies between the two movies, that the Bodhi characters believe that their extreme sports are bringing them closer to some sort of spiritual center. Swayze's just doing it with his Swayzeisms, and it's fun to watch. But the other guy, he does a good job. But again, unfortunately, he's not actually in a Point Break movie, so I don't think he gets the chance to show that.
Yeah, we have Edgar Ramirez playing the new Bodhi, and like you said, he pretty much does what Swayze does. I would say he does it to a little bit more of an extreme. Like Swayze's, like you said, he kind of peppers in his little surfer philosophies, but this Bodhi, that's like all he really does. Is like he never really just has like a normal conversation, like, "How you doing, bud?" "Yeah, I'm all right." He's like, he always spouting out like some type of wisdom. It's like, to let other people determine your fate is unforgivable. It's just like everything is so heavy with this guy.
Yeah.
So Swayze was allowed to have a little bit of fun. He's at his party, he's taking tequila shots out of a girl, and then this other Bodhi's just like, "No, everything is pain, and I need to reconnect with the earth." So while he is more memorable than the new Johnny Utah, he's just a little too serious, and especially when it's a Point Break remake, which the source material isn't too serious. You're going too deep on me, bro. Pull it back a little bit.
Yeah, just a little heavy-handed with his philosophy. Whereas, hey man, maybe I do want to watch Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves playing football at night with lights in the background. You know what I mean? Maybe I want to see him get in fist fights with War Chief or whoever the hell they were fighting on the beach. Like this stuff that they did as a unit, like the Johnny Utah and the Bodhi in the original film. They back each other up. They get into scraps and they disagree on different things, but ultimately they're friends. And it really allows you to feel how conflicted Keanu is with having to take down his friends. These other people, they're not really his friends, in the remake. And I would say, maybe it's a little too early to jump into this, but the way they kill off the love interest in the new film completely destroys the motivation if you're basing it off of the first film. Like, Keanu Reeves, throughout the entire film, has a reason not to take Bodhi out. Whether it's he's just very good friends with him, or Bodhi has kidnapped his girlfriend. There are two reasons why Keanu Reeves actually doesn't take it to the point where he's going to take Bodhi out. In this remake, you kill off the love interest, who is in 2 scenes, by the way.
She barely does anything. Very forgettable.
They go swimming, and then there's like a love scene. And that's pretty much her only role in the movie, other than being revealed, is the person that gets shot in a bank robbery gone wrong. And Johnny Utah in that film actually kills the love interest, unbeknownst to him. But then after that, there's really zero reason why he's keeping Bodhi alive, because they're not, as far as I can see in the movie, they're not friends. He just made him basically kill someone that he was into. And this whole, I'm not going to shoot you, I'm just going to chase you around and climb rocks and jump off of waterfalls and not die for some reason. And all this, it's like, no, like you're an FBI agent. Like, literally shoot that guy, into the movie, roll credits. But, like, there's no explanation of why he continues this, like, farce of a chase with this guy. Like, it's just so strange.
Because it's a rewrite and it was bad. But no, getting back to the group, though, yeah. Bodhi and his group in the original, they're a little more fun. They're playing football, like you said. They're having parties. They're just hanging out. And then they're just surfing for fun. They are just having fun. Keanu Reeves is seeing this. He wants to join them. You're watching this as a viewer going, yeah, that actually seems like a fun lifestyle. Maybe I want to do that. But then you watch the group in the new one, they're not really having fun. Sure, there's the parties, but you don't really see them party. And they're not really just doing sports for fun. They're just like, we have to train for this, for the Izaki 8, and that's all we're going to do. And they have one meal, I think, and that's really the only time you ever see them not doing the extreme sport or philosophizing about it.
Yeah, they kind of bro out. They bro out in that one scene where they're like outdoors in nature, and that's the closest thing we get. You're right.
But there's nothing appealing there really for me. It's like you're doing this super extreme, dangerous thing, and then you're not really having fun. Sure, you're getting drunk and everything, but it's like just a party. It's like, come on, man. We don't need to do these extreme sports things. Can we just play football on the beach, huh?
Dan, you're telling me you don't want to almost die in a big wave, wake up the next day, go to French Fight Club, get your ass kicked. Like, yeah, where's the fun, man? Like, it's not there. In the original film, you're right. Like, I feel like I want to be part of the crew, even though they're criminals. It's like, look at these guys. They live by their own rules. They see the people that are working like a 9 to 5. They call their cars metal coffins. They're like, look at these lunks going out there and slaves to money. And like, we're just out here living this surfer lifestyle and we're free. And that motivation makes sense. It makes sense that they would turn to something as extreme as robbing banks, because to them, the worst thing you could do is have a normal job. So fuck it. If we got to rob banks to like go surf the biggest waves out there, that's what we're going to do. And like that motivation makes sense. And it's fun to watch them interact. It's fun to watch them even when they're robbing banks, they're having fun. You know,
they're called the ex-presidents, right? And then they're doing the voices of the presidents, especially the guy who's got the Dick Nixon mask on. He loves just
killing it,
yucking it up as Dick Nixon. He's quoting Nixon, saying "I am not a crook" as he's leaving the scene of the crime, showing his ass to people with "thank you" written on it. I mean, yeah, they're having fun no matter what they're doing. Yeah, except until the end where they get shot. Then they're not having as much fun.
You know, and the movie sort of implies that if you follow your code, if you're true to yourself, you know, that things work out. And really, Bodhi runs into trouble in that movie because he breaks his own code. Like, that's what sets off his problems, because he took it too far. And, I mean, this other movie has a code, but Jesus, man.
I don't even understand it half the time. You had mentioned it before, French Fight Club. Okay, so there's a scene in the remake where Johnny Utah decides to meet up where Bodhi, he said the gang would be. And it's this skeezy, underground, pretty much like what you said, Fight Club, just two dudes just duking it out. And then everybody's like, what are you doing here, Utah? He's like, Bodhi told me I should come here. And then Bodhi's like, it's okay. And out of nowhere, they just start fighting each other, just wailing on him.
Johnny Utah's taking his shirt off, and he's just like, all right, bro. And then Bodhi sucker punches him, and like, I guess they're in a fight now.
I didn't understand why they fought, and I didn't understand why they still hung out with him after the fight. He's just said, you're not ready. And then Johnny Utah just moping outside playing with a lighter like a little baby, and then, okay, you could come in the group, I guess. The motivations for letting him in the group were unclear, and so much of the remake is unclear.
Oh, and then the scene where they say, oh, we knew you were an FBI guy, like, the whole time, but we thought we could free you. It's like, what are you talking about, man?
Bad writing, because he wasn't an FBI agent originally. They had to write that in.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense at all.
I mean, just from their perspective, even if this guy could potentially, like, learn about himself, you could just do the extreme sports thing and not bring him into the crime part. Like, there was no reason to actually bring him into the criminal element or hang out with him at all. Like, if you're going to be doing multinational crimes that, you know, you could be indicted for, why are you hanging out with an FBI guy? Because he used to YouTube skateboard or something like that? It's insane. I was basically just saying that, like, why would they hang out with an FBI agent? Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. Just, if you're going to be doing these major crimes, and their timeline's even shorter than the original film, it's 2 weeks. What are you doing?
They're doing the Ozaki 8. They have to do the challenges, and afterwards they have to give back, which for some reason means committing large crimes. Samsara, the love interest in the remake, she had mentioned that the original Ozaki, one of the ways he gave back was he planted a tree once. Couldn't they just be planting trees the whole fucking movie? Did they need to be committing these super over-the-top heists where poor people get money? Why did they have to commit crimes?
Yeah.
You would have been fine if you just kept planting trees. I don't know why you had to commit crimes. Now you got the FBI after you. It doesn't make sense to me.
Like, you're right, based off of their own interpretation of what Ozaki stood for. The most extreme thing he did was his boat got in front of some whalers, and, like, that was his demise. But it didn't sound like he was, like, an extreme eco-terrorist. It didn't sound like he was, like, going out there with, like, assault rifles and, like, robbing people and, like, just dumping diamonds and gold in remote villages, because that's how you fix classism. It's like, it's ridiculous, man.
And wasn't their thing so they're giving back to the earth, right? Am I correct there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Because we've been taking so much from it, and like you said, they're eco-terrorists pretty much. But the one mission, they want to stop a gold mine from being mined, pretty much. They have to blow up the side of a mountain. Isn't that taking away from the earth? Aren't they doing the exact same thing that they're trying to fight against? Am I wrong there?
You're not wrong. I don't think that anybody thought about it as hard as you did just now. It's wild to me to think that film got greenlit in that way. Like, I feel bad that we have to keep doing this, but it just felt like, to me, some producer's like, well, I'm getting my money back for this thing somehow. And just all the things that get shoehorned in there. And the entire time I was watching it, it was actually basically like just going between random action set pieces. the character building, man. I would have loved it. I remember watching the original film. It's like, I love the Swayze Keanu Reeves connection. I love what Lori Petty does in the movie, where she's got character and she's capable and goes out there and she surfs and introduces him to the culture and is a big driving point for the plot in your second and third act of the film. Gary Busey he's in rare form. Like, I just think that there's something missing there, because Keanu's interactions with Gary Busey are awesome. Keanu's interactions, honestly, with all of these characters, with the lieutenant, there's everyone has a personality, and it comes through. And that just helps you know where people stand in the film. I think it's just missing there. There's no life to these characters in a remake.
Yeah, they don't really have any personality. They're just sort of going through the motions and doing these extreme sports. Like Gary Busey, right? He was hilarious in the original.
Oh,
he has so much character. Just he brings so much humor and levity to the film, and then his banter with Keanu, just gives him and Keanu so much more depth. They have so much to do, and then you have Pappas in the remake, and that's played by Ray Winstone, who I loved in The Departed, but I honestly feel, again, he's one of those shoehorn characters in. He really has nothing to do. Do you know anything he did?
Underutilized. I think he took him surfing. Like, that's the one thing.
That's it.
And he vaguely says that maybe he's getting too close to these people, which I don't understand why anyone would think that. Busey does so much in that first film. Like, from the beginning when they're training and he, like, belly flops into the pool and he's, like, talking shit about Keanu while he's blindfolded and he realizes that he's talking to him. He makes him get meatballs for two meatball subs. Like, these little moments are fun, and they break up, what could potentially get stale in the movie where you're just watching this surfing without context. Like, there's context to what everyone's doing.
Yeah, it's building these characters, it's giving them personality. They actually, okay, I get who Gary Busey is. Like, immediately from that first interaction with Keanu, it's like, okay, he's kind of a dick, but he's also kind of funny, and he's gonna be one of the good guys. I get it. But then you really don't get that from any of the characters in the remake. They don't get a chance to, like, joke around or show any of their personality. It's all business all the time with everybody. We gotta try to drive the plot forward. We're not gonna do anything on the side. I'm not gonna talk to you about cold pizza and how it's good breakfast for you.
Yeah. The FBI investigation is a bigger part of the first movie, where you have this red herring, like this other group of guys, and maybe this is the ex-president. And you get this insanely epic raid scene, like you mentioned.
Oh, yes, very memorable. And Anthony Kiedis, Red Hot Chili Peppers, is there.
Yeah.
Shoots himself in the foot.
Oh, man. Yeah, and there's that R rating right there. There's a ton of nudity in that scene. Guy gets shot in the foot. Someone's going to slam Keanu's head into a lawnmower.
That was a fantastic action sequence. You want to see a good action sequence remake? Watch that. That raid, even though it's like 90s and it's a stupid reason, like, I can't hear over this lawnmower, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But, like, still, like, my heart was pumping because, like, they have a lot of guns in that house.
Yeah.
A lot of people are getting shot. Tom Sizemore is undercover in that scene. There's so much happening. It's crazy. I loved it. It was the action during that raid was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah. And it's a turning point for Keanu and Gary Busey, because Gary is, even though he's a jokester, he's a career professional. It comes up a lot. He's like, I've had to fire my gun 19 times in my career. He had to shoot somebody that day. Keanu Reeves had to shoot a guy for the first time on duty. And it's a turning point for him. He's realizing that there's stakes to this. It's not just about surfing and having fun. Like, he's into some kind of dangerous shit. And that scene, it's awesome. Like, other than, these big, cool bank robbery scenes, that's one of the other few times where you get to see Keanu in action in this, like, FBI mode. And I think it serves the movie so well, because you now have a turning point. It's like, okay, we thought it was these guys. Tom Sizemore's pissed because he's been working this case for 3 months.
You think he likes that hair?
Yeah. He's like, let me tell you, how were they there when they were freaking Fort Lauderdale?
My wife wants me to stay at a Ramada. See, we're able to quote it because it's so, yeah, it's fun, it's memorable, they're believable characters. They have somewhere to go. I believe this world. It's memorable. I can't say the same about any of the characters in the remake. There's none of these little minor moments, but it's just like world building. I love it.
Right. World building is so big for any movie, which is, I think, where a lot of remakes are going to suffer. We talked about this before. A lot of the reason we like the original movies is because they built this universe, and you love going there and experiencing it. And a lot of times when you do a remake, you're not playing in the same universe. So it's like, okay, this may be thematically the same thing, but it's not the thing that we originally liked. And this remake just, one, it's not, we're going to say it outright, it's not even a Point Break movie. And you don't get these fun moments. Like, me and you aren't talking about the fun scene where Sizemore and Busey, like, you're missing that.
You mean the fun scene where they jump in a hole and open parachutes? That was fun, right?
Yeah.
Impressive feat.
It was all very impressive.
But, like, where's the fun, right? It's just like, oh, that was nice, but give me something else.
I will say that if I did have a complaint about the first film, other than the plot is absurd. We can say that. Like, it's kind of absurd that he would have been allowed to work that undercover case the way he did. My other complaint, other than just absurdity, is I think the runtime is a little too long, because we get into a moment where about an hour into the movie, I was sort of checking the time, and I was like, where the hell are they going from here? Because I hadn't seen it in a while. And, I mean, you were basically kind of at what could have been pretty much close to your third act, and you're halfway through the movie. And I'm like, all right, so this robbery is basically gone wrong. Where are we going from here? And it goes on for probably a little bit longer than it should have. There's some elements that get introduced that I don't think necessarily need to be there. But those would be really my only complaints about the original movie.
Oh, I definitely agree. Yeah. The runtime you felt it. I was checking the time just to see, like, how much, half hour still to go. It definitely dragged out at certain points. I mean, I love the action sequences, but there was just some slow parts that it dragged out, and they definitely didn't need to do that. Yeah. But as much as I thought that movie was long, the remake is shorter, but I was just like, oh my god, when is this movie going to end? Because that, even though it was shorter, that still felt longer than the original.
Yeah, no, it definitely felt longer. And, I mean, really, what made the first film feel long to me was they had, at about the halfway point of the movie, had introduced the concept that now Bodhi knows that Keanu Reeves is an FBI agent, and yet they still kind of, like, pal about and stuff like that. It was a little strange.
Yeah, I didn't understand that, because, okay, so there was the failed bank robbery, and Keanu is pretty much chasing, I'm going to assume it's Bodhi under the Reagan mask, right? It was Bodhi?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
And he kind of has him dead to rights. He can't run anymore, but he's got him locked in his sights with his gun. You think he's going to shoot him. Bodhi can get away, but Bodhi doesn't either. They're just kind of doing a stare-off.
Right.
The bromance.
Yeah.
They're just staring at each other, so you know that whoever it is, which is Bodhi, he's getting a good look. He knows it's Johnny Utah. It's not just some random FBI guy. He knows who it is. And you think, okay, the cat's out of the bag. This is it. It's over. This is our third act. We're just going to wrap everything up nicely. But everything doesn't get wrapped up nicely. Instead, they still hang out, and they do this skydiving sequence, which confused me, because I was like, well, obviously Johnny knows they're the bad guys.
Right.
And they know he's the cop, so why are we all hanging out here like we don't know who's who?
Yeah.
So it felt odd, and I feel like maybe they should have done the skydiving earlier, before the bank robbery. Yeah, the whole time I was watching, I was just scratching my head, like, I was trying to come up with excuses, like, why would they be still hanging out and skydiving? It didn't make sense to me. They should have just came to him and be like, we have Tyler, now you're going to do what we want. But instead, they hang out, bro, and do some cool skydiving. And they kind of threaten, like, your chute might not open. Yeah. Oh, shit, they're going to do this to him, huh? But it's just playful banter that they're all still seeming to have fun with this FBI guy who wants to put him away. Unclear character motivations spread throughout the final half of the film.
Yeah. I think that there was an opportunity to sort of kind of start winding down and stick the dismount, as it were, because up until then, the movies, plot points be damned, was pretty fantastic. And then the second half actually kind of takes away from the film, because I think that runtime and the confusing character motivation for like the 20 minutes or so afterwards, it's a little out there. It's like, okay, they're skydiving. It is what it is. Like, I'm not going to complain too much about the plot of Point Break.
Exactly. It's Point Break, so you're like, okay, I guess. Why not? Why not? They're going to have one more hangout before the shit hits the fan.
I will say that another thing about some of those scenes that we're talking about, the skydiving, and when Bodhi gets away from him in the Reagan mask, there's things that get introduced by the characters that come back. It's like Johnny Utah didn't go pro because he hurt his knee. You know, they play off of that in the movie. I think it's smart. It's a nice way to, you know, keep in the audience's mind that, hey, remember, Johnny Utah was the big-time quarterback until his knee gave out. And, like, here it is again, that knee giving him problems. And it's like, now you're unsure as an audience member if he's going to be able to complete his mission, you know, be able to, like, stop these guys because he's got the old knees bothering him again.
Wait, a plot that calls back to an earlier scene? It's like they put thought into the script or something, Reggie.
Yeah. I mean, the one glaring plot point in both movies that kills me, but again, I will ignore it for, you know, that Swayze Keanu goodness. Who goes undercover as himself?
Okay. Never thought about that. Good point.
It was fine, you know, like the way it's shot and the way it actually kind of helps him get respect from the gang, that they know he's Johnny Utah. But generally, if you're the Federal Bureau of Investigation, you don't send famous athletes undercover. Typically, you don't want your undercover people to be recognizable to anyone in the streets. Because, I mean, like, I don't know, what's Johnny Utah been up to all these years? Like, anyone could recognize him. Someone said, hey, how's it going at the academy? You know? Like, it's,
you know how you do undercover work a lot as a cop? You still doing that? You undercover right now?
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, though. So I didn't even think about that. But they probably just did that so he could get accepted into the groups a little bit easier. Both movies, he uses the name Johnny Utah to get in with them because it's a well-known name in both their circles.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's forgivable in the film, even though it's generally absurd to be yourself undercover. It actually fits in this movie because it's the one thing that actually gives these people a little bit of respect for him because they don't really respect his surfing. But then when they realize, oh man, you had that great game at USC, like that's his in, and it works. And it also lets you know, again, without doing much, saying, hey, Keanu Reeves in this movie is a stud. Like, this guy's an all-pro blue flame quarterback. He's the hotshot kid with great accuracy. And I think it works really well. What are your thoughts on Bodie's sort of turn in the original film where he's pretty non-violent throughout most of the movie, and then he gets to the point where he's taking people hostage. You know, he kidnaps Tyler and basically is going to have someone take her out if he doesn't pull off his bank robbery successfly. There's a bit of an arc there as well.
Yeah, all of a sudden out of nowhere, he just becomes this huge threat to our hero. I don't know, just kind of went with it. I know it seemed like kind of out of nowhere. He said himself, like, I don't like violence. You know I could never do that to Tyler. It's not me. It's Rosie. I think it was Rosie.
Yeah, Rosie, yep.
So he kind of plays off that it's not really him. And it's like, I was okay with it because I really didn't think he would hurt Tyler since he did have a past relationship with her.
Sure.
And he said, as long as you do what I say, then everything will be okay. So it didn't seem that out of character for me, and it made him a serious threat, right. And it gives you one of the more interesting scenes in the movie where now Keanu Reeves actually has to help them do a bank robbery, and I think having her life on the line, that's good motivation for him to just go, yeah, okay, I'll do whatever you say. So it worked for me. I thought it was believable.
Absolutely. I'll say, because you are talking about that sort of final bank robbing scene where Keanu's kind of involved, despite, you know, he really doesn't want to be involved, but they have his girlfriend at this point. Boy, does that scene raise the stakes substantially. Like, the movie goes from being kind of like, ho-hum, look at us, you know, take from the rich, give to ourselves, to, dude, you shot a cop, bro. Like, half your gang gets taken out in this one sequence, and it's this one moment where Bodie makes a choice that is outside of his typical character, and the consequences for everyone are you know, they dire. It's pretty substantial.
Yeah, that's definitely the moment in the movie where you're like, okay, this isn't just going to be fun anymore. People are dying. Keanu Reeves is committing a crime without a mask.
Right.
He's the only one without a mask, and they make sure, hey, look at the camera.
Yeah.
He's screwed. People are dying. His girl may die. The stakes are raised to as high as they can be at this point.
Yeah.
I think it's good. You need that kind of turn to, like, now we're not going to have jokes anymore. Now it's going to be serious. And it kind of lets you know that the movie's going to be wrapping up soon. Or hopefully it does get drawn out a little bit.
It goes on for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think you need that turn.
That turn's awesome, and Busey gets to, that relationship comes back into play, whereas in this remake, there is no relationship with Pappas in this new film. So there wouldn't be a reason why, if Johnny Utah was in trouble, Pappas would bail him out. It's like in this scene, like it's looking bad for Johnny. You know, he's been caught on camera. A cop's dead. You know, he's in cuffs at one point, and The only thing that really saves him in that moment is this relationship that he built with Pappas. And again, the movie paying off on earlier sequences, and I think it works really well there. And it starts getting into crazy town, though, with the skydiving and the plot from there. It gets pretty ramped up, dude.
Oh, I love that. Pappas like releases him. They go to the airport because that's where Bodhi's gonna go, and then we have another shootout. Unfortunately, Gary Busey's Pappas gets killed. You know, it's a bummer. He was definitely an enjoyable character. I forgot he was in this movie. He's one of my favorite characters in the movie. And then we were in the airplane with Keanu, Swayze, and one of his other buddies in the group. And here's another plot hole I don't quite understand. So they're flying, but they have to parachute out in order to drive away. Couldn't they just fly to where they needed to go? Unless they're driving to Mexico. I wasn't entirely sure.
I think their explanation was that they were on radar and that, you know, if they stayed in the plane, they would potentially be caught because eventually they would know where they're landing. That was sort of my takeaway, but, whatever.
It's again, it's an absurd plot. So for some reason, Patrick Swayze, they have to skydive to get away. Of course, right?
Yeah.
But it is a really cool scene because Swayze and his guy get away. Keanu's up there, just so pissed he doesn't have a chute, and he just jumps anyway. I was like, do it, and he did it. It was so awesome. He just jumps out of there, just goes right after Bodhi. Like, you pull the cord, and then
Well, you can't pull the cord if you're holding your gun.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's an awesome sequence, you know, jumping out of
great.
a plane without a chute. That's really cool. I don't know how they filmed it, but it looked pretty real to me. I'm sure the close-up shots weren't real skydiving, but it looked pretty awesome, and my adrenaline was going during those scenes.
I love, I know we always talk about, practical effects and, shooting real stuff. That sequence looked great because you could tell most of it was not, some random green screen CGI bullshit. People jumped out of planes, and it made it work. I think that both films do a great job with that. You get real action sequences, real people surfing, real people skydiving, and it holds up completely.
So again, one of the things I'll say about the remake is they do these extreme sports and they do them all practical. Like they hired professionals and they filmed it. And it looks beautiful. My favorite is definitely the wingsuit jump. That's just such a cool thing to do, and it looks amazing to see on film.
It's a great shot.
But it doesn't help drive the plot exactly.
Right. That's the biggest problem with the remake.
Style over substance.
Yeah, exactly. The fact the original movie has these great characters that we can recall, but then awesome action sequences as well, works. If you just have the action sequences in the original Point Break, we're not talking about it. It was a character-driven movie with good action. This other movie is just action with very little character, and that's the biggest problem with the remake and what actually makes the original movie shine and why we decided to, watch it and talk about it. That's
exactly it. I don't remember much of the action sequences from the original Point Break, but I remember the characters. I remember some Keanuisms. I am an FBI agent. I can quote the movie even though I haven't seen it in years. But the characters brought me back to it, and then the action sequences just blew me away because I didn't remember them being that good. And they still hold up today. The bank robbery. The first one where Keanu was chasing Swayze through houses in L.A. It's just the way they shot that.
Oh my god,
it's just incredible. The camera's just behind them, and then you feel like you're in the chase at the same time. It is so good the way they filmed it.
It's shot so well when he sets fire to the car at the gas station. Just everything about that scene is awesome, and especially when he throws a dog at a guy.
Yeah. He threw the pit bull at him, and then Keanu has to kick the dog. You're like, oh, dip, they would not do that today.
No, they would not. It's so absurd, and I love it. That's really what it comes down to. That's the definition, to me, of Point Break. It's so absurd, and I love it.
Yeah, it was great. Action was great. The music it was perfect. Everything about the action sequence, I couldn't want anything better, because it was just perfect. I loved it. But then you have the action sequences in the remake, and they're okay. It's mostly just the stunts, which is cool in itself, but the stakes aren't really there. Our main characters aren't going to die. You're really focusing on Bodhi and Utah. So if one of the guys in the gang dies, it sucks, but hey, you don't really care about them because you don't get to know them. And even the characters don't care if they die. It's like, your friend died. He knew what he was doing. It's this bullshit that the movie's been spouting the whole time. It's all right, you don't care? I don't care.
The minute he committed to it, it was his line. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
Yeah.
But there's no stakes in it. There are so much stakes in the action sequences in the original, and
Yeah.
just completely missing from the remake.
When you have a movie like that and nobody really cares that the love interest died, that's a poorly written or shot film. The love interest, the word is interest, and we're not interested. Like, I don't care. Sansara, it means wonder. It's like it means get out of the movie.
Is get out of the movie because you're very forgettable. That also bothered me about the remake. It's like, you kept Johnny Utah, you got Pappas, you got Bodhi, but we're gonna change Tyler to Samsara.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man. Why do we got to change one thing when we keep everything else the same?
She probably got work and couldn't come in for reshoots.
I was gonna go there too. Yeah, that's what had to happen, right?
Because when you really think about it, the only person that's really in the scenes that tie you into Point Break are Johnny Utah character.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only one talking to Pappas. He's the only one talking to Delroy Lindo. The other characters aren't really in these FBI sequences. I mean, that's pretty telling to me.
Except for Bodhi at the very end. But that's only at the very end.
That's fair.
Because I don't even think, other than the one scene where he goes, "We knew you were a cop," does anybody in the group ever mention, "We got this FBI after us"? I don't think it's ever mentioned that they feel a threat of the FBI catching them.
Yeah, no.
No.
No, but you did bring up the end, so I guess we could talk about how these fantastic movies end.
You want to describe it, or?
Let's see. So I had a little bit of trouble with the original, but I just stopped thinking, and I had fun with it again. Because, it seems like he's in pretty dire straits. Like, has been cuffed. He's being essentially implicated in the murder of an off-duty cop. But then, like, next thing you know, he's still an FBI guy, and he apparently for the past year he's been chasing Bodhi, and I just missed you 2 weeks ago in Mexico. And but he knew the one place he could find Bodhi, which was this once-in-a-lifetime big wave. There's a giant storm, 50-foot waves. Bodhi could not resist going out there and trying to, just have this epic ride on these waves. And him and Keanu have this sort of meet up again.
I was going to say, it was alluded to before at the party Bodhi had at his house. They were all talking about what's the biggest wave in the world. And he's like, "Let me tell you about this 2-time-in-a-century wave, man." I don't know, my Swayze comes out as McConaughey. So pretty much somewhere off the coast of Australia, there's this wave that hits because some Arctic front comes north to Australia, and it only happens twice a century. So Keanu knew that he couldn't resist it. So again, a callback to something that happened earlier in the plot.
Of course, and there's that connection again, that those two made a connection, and they shared stories, and they shared experiences with each other. So Keanu knew that, and he knew where to find his friend. Even though they had a lot of issues, clearly, holding his girlfriend ransom and implicating him in a crime and all that stuff, they're still buddies. They're still buddies. Which is why when Keanu throws the cuffs on him and Patrick Swayze is pleading, he's like, "Bro, let me ride the wave, man. I know I killed people. I know I robbed banks and, captured your girlfriend and threatened to kill her and threw you out of a plane and all this other stuff. But, dude, look at that wave." And Keanu Reeves just lets him ride.
Yeah. Again, like I said when I was a kid, that ending confused me. It was like, why is he letting him go? Not only does he let him go, he takes his badge, his FBI badge, and just throws it away. He's done. Big problem with the movie, because you're telling me Keanu spent a year about searching for this guy just to find him, let him go, and quit his job.
Yeah.
What? What? Come on, man. I mean, I get it. It's stupid to let Swayze just surf it out, but it's the kind of movie it was. We had this surfing philosophy throughout the whole movie. So I was like, I guess this is the only way the movie could end. But then did he have to throw his badge away too? It's like, what was the point? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, it's true. It's like one of those moments where, if he was really trying to get back at this guy for everything he'd done to him, you keep those cuffs on him and this guy spends the rest of his life wondering what could have been with that wave. But, maybe in the moment, Keanu Reeves' friendship was rekindled, and he's like, "You know what? I know this is what you want. I also know you're not getting out of this alive, so I guess in a way that's justice, but not really. This guy's dying doing what he loves." This is crazy.
And like he said before at the party, there's nothing wrong with dying doing what you love. So Swayze really wins at the end when you think about it.
Totally goes to Valhalla. This is like exactly what he wanted, man. I don't know. It's an epic scene. Him just like riding out that wave and just kind of like crashing out. It's actually really well shot. It's fun to see. All the cops are like, oh, we'll just get him when he comes back in. He's not coming back.
He's not coming back. So good.
It's so good. Again, it's absurd, but I love it. Like, it makes zero sense in terms of, like you said, what he's been talking about. I was chasing you here. I was chasing you there, and I missed you. But like now, I finally got you. This thing that I've been searching for. I don't care. Go ride your wave. Have fun.
Yep, that's Point Break for you. I mean,
whereas this other film, I mean, I am confused. I'm confused because one, they're not really friends. I keep saying that. Maybe they are as written on paper, but like based on what the movie showed me and the experiences that were shown to the audience, these guys aren't friends. You made me shoot my girlfriend. You killed a bunch of people. I've known you for 2 weeks. Like whatever, man. Like I took a Blackwater helicopter out to the middle of the ocean to find you, and then I just get zipped up back in the helicopter, and you go ride your wave. It's insane.
It's stupid too because he's there by himself. At least Keanu had like all these other cops with him, right?
Right.
But no, we're just gonna send Utah by himself in this one helicopter to the middle of the ocean, which I don't know, and then he just lets him go, and it's just it again. We keep saying this. It's felt so shoehorned in. It's called Point Break, so it has to end with a guy surfing and dying. So that's how they ended it. It made no sense. It wasn't as deep as the original, that's for sure. And yeah, it's just they just did it because it's called Point Break. That's it.
That's it. It's just there's so many elements that don't make sense in the context of this new film. They didn't make sense in the original, but they were explained a little bit better. Like it doesn't really make sense that the FBI is bankrolling this experience. Like, what have you been doing for 2 weeks? Oh, I've just been like hanging out. Like
he's been getting laid. I got pictures.
He's got zero evidence of any crime until they actually commit a crime. And it's just like, why are they using all these resources? Because it seems really expensive to fly helicopters and drive boats and all this stuff. You know, in the original film, it's also a little dubious, but, you know, Gary Busey's a seasoned veteran. He's the only person with anything resembling a lead on these guys. So I could see Dr. Cox letting them, you know, try to figure this one out. It makes a little bit more sense. But there's also the idea that he's on thin ice. It's not like, hey, dude, just go out there and surf. It was like, hey, it's crunch time. Give me some results. Like that tension is actually there in the film, and it's a plot point. It's good to have those.
Actually, going back to the ending, the remake doesn't end with surfing.
Oh, yeah.
The remake ends with snowboarding. Our hero, Johnny Utah, has now, it looks like he's decided to do the Ozaki 8 himself.
I guess. Is that what that was?
Oh,
wow.
I think that's what it was. I mean, it doesn't make sense, though, because he already did the snowboarding one, so did he have to do it again? Or maybe he just, I don't know. That's what I saw. He's doing it again.
I mean, he might as well have. He did about 5 of them just hanging out for 2 weeks, so might as well figure it out. I'm just tired of even talking about it. Like, who cares? The Ozaki 8. Like, what is this, man?
The end, I know, I get it. It was stupid. The ending was stupid, but the opening was pretty stupid as well. I want to get into the opening of the remake.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about it, man.
Okay, so the opening is unique in that there's no opening credits, right?
You're right. No, they just kind of start the movie.
It starts out with Johnny Utah, like we said. He's on a motorcycle, but he's not alone. The whole movie, he's been mourning the death of his friend Jeff, who we meet here. So we're introduced to Johnny Utah and his buddy Jeff right away. And they're just talking about, we're going to get so many views, bro. It's going to be awesome. They're on this mountain dirt trail, whatever. They're doing it. They got a monster-sponsored helicopter filming them for YouTube. They're riding through, doing this crazy maneuvers, and then comes this jump. This one jump over, like, I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's like over a canyon, pretty much. But there's like a small rock pillar that they can land on, right? It's very small, very difficult. Johnny Utah does the jump, lands it perfectly fine. His buddy Jeff's coming up. Oh, Jeff also, played by The guy from the Psycho show. I remember after we did Psycho, I started watching the TV show, so I'm still watching it. This guy plays Norman Bates' brother on the show. He plays Dylan. So I was so happy to see. I'm like, oh my god, the guy from Psycho. I like him in Psycho. I was so happy he was in the movie. I'm like, I can't wait to see what he does. Is he Johnny Utah, maybe? Oh boy, was I up for disappointment when as soon as Jeff does his jump, he does not land that right, and he sort of teeters at the edge of that cliff, and Johnny Utah's trying to pull him up, and Jeff falls to his death.
Nah.
Now, normally you see somebody die in a movie, you're just like, oh, that sucks. But you introduce two characters in minute 1 and in minute 2, one of them's dead. I was laughing so hard that this movie tried to make me feel anything at this early in the movie. I couldn't believe they did that. I was like, what? Even the way he fell into the canyon looked pretty fake and CG.
Oh, it's so bad. So bad.
So I was laughing for a good 5 minutes after this opening, unintentionally. So I knew from that moment on, oh boy, this is going to be a really bad movie.
And I mean, like, anyone that would make a jump like that, like, not even to get too technical with the motorbikes or anything, you bail. Like, you fuck that bike, dude. Like, all right, lost the bike, done. Made the jump. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, this guy's supposed to be really good at this? Is that what you're telling me? Because, like, it doesn't seem like it.
He could have reached for Johnny's arm and then just let the bike fall.
Yeah, like, they're holding on to the bike. Like, he's, like, revving the bike, and, like, this guy's trying to hold this, like, hundreds of pound bike instead of his friend. It just doesn't make any sense. And you're right. Like, why do I care?
You don't. And I hope you had a good laugh like I did, because I couldn't believe it. It was like Dylan from Bates Motel, just here and then gone.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. You don't do that. If anything, you have it in a flashback later in the movie. You don't introduce a character and kill him right away. That's just bad movie making right there. Come on.
That's bad. It's just, wow. It's insane, dude. It's insane. It makes, like, the whole movie makes you question what was originally going to be in it. You know, like, the entire time you're just like, was that scene actually in it before, or was that added to give him motivation to be in the FBI, or was that, like, part of the thing before? Like, it doesn't fit with anything else in the film.
Nope. It's only called back to one scene. He's not even really fazed by the fact that his friend died. You know, he's not struggling with it throughout the movie.
Right.
See, I thought that might make sense to me if, like, his character arc was like, oh, my friend died, so I gave up extreme sports. I joined the FBI. Now I'm doing extreme sports again with these guys. Now that I solved the crime, I'm going to go back to dirt biking. I thought it was going to end with him dirt biking. That would have made more sense to me.
That would make more sense.
Yeah.
You know, maybe him doing, like, a crazy jump or something like that.
Yeah, then, like, this one's for you, Jeff. You know, something lame and cheesy, just like the original Point Break. But no, they go a totally different route.
I mean, it's just like, is he Xander Cage? Like, I'm just really confused by, like, what's going on, man. Like, you're right. Why is he snowboarding? And it's not a long sequence. It's not explained. It's just, oh, that guy's last wave, which is totally where you end that movie. Honestly, the only reason he's snowboarding is to roll credits. That's insane.
And to show the stunts one more time. Just like, hey, remember, the movie wasn't that bad. Look at these stunts. Now you can see the line.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy, indeed.
Oh, boy.
I guess
Poor Jeff.
Poor Jeff. I was so happy. He's like, oh, yeah, he's in the movie. Oh, fuck. Just quickly, like I said before, there was nudity in the original, so that means it was rated R. A lot of F-bombs dropped by Johnny Utah at hilarious points when he's trying to learn how to surf. Loved it.
Yeah.
The remake, though, PG-13, couldn't show as much nudity, or any nudity at all, and definitely no cursing. So I don't know if it would have really made it a better movie at all if it was rated R. I don't know what they could have done with that rated R rating to improve what they had.
I mean, the only thing they could have done is, I guess, to make shooting scenes more graphic, or, you know, when these guys were, like, randomly dying during the challenges, maybe that could have been more graphic, which wouldn't have helped at all. So you're right, there's not much based on what we saw that a rated R rating would have helped them with. Like, I don't think they would have used it properly, to be honest.
And we did say there was a lot of good. The use of practical effects in the remake was, like, amazing, and I applaud them for that.
For sure.
But every time they used green screen, you could easily tell. It was some of the worst green screen effects I've seen in a movie made so recently, 2015, not that long ago. But you could clearly tell. It was just like, oh, that doesn't look real at all. So, good practical effects, bad CGI effects in this movie.
Bad CGI, yeah.
Or just bad green screen in general.
Very true. It's unfortunate because, you know, you can tell a lot of work was put into filming it. It must have been pretty intense to shoot a lot of those scenes. And whatever they were originally shooting, I don't think it was really served well by being thrown in as a Point Break movie. I guess more people saw it, which I guess is good, maybe. But at the same time, like, it doesn't, I don't know. Like, I guess it's cool that we saw that they did it, but, like, we didn't enjoy it. So I don't know how good that was. Because I think in another context, I would have been fine with all those action sequences. If it was some other film and there was some other plot getting you to the different action sequences.
Yeah, absolutely. By making it Point Break, you're going to make that connection to the original Point Break. And by not having anything in common with the original Point Break, you're just going to get angry and furious and just question it the whole time. Like, I don't understand why they're doing this. They didn't do this in the original.
Right.
So if you have any love for that, then you're not gonna be happy. But maybe we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here.
It might be.
Just trying to see if there's any other points that we could talk about. Oh, the getting hair sample scene. That seems a little absurd to me. Because they're going around the beach to get hair samples. They're trying to figure out, like, the toxicity of the hair sample that they found at the crime to match the toxicity of somewhere on the beach. But couldn't they just get the sample directly from the water? Did they have to cut off people's hair? I wasn't sure about that.
Interesting. But then how you get Keanu Reeves to, like, oh, you got a huge going through your ear. Like, you need that.
It was one of those stupid scenes that just didn't make sense to me in the original.
It was there for funsies.
Definitely. I mean, you can't take away. They're just trying to have a little bit of fun. And it's a movie about a cop who goes undercover to become a surfer. You have to have fun with that. It's so stupid saying that out loud that if you don't have these stupid little jokes and have fun with it, then you're making the wrong movie.
Correct. 100% agree. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm just looking through the notes. I think we hit on most of the stuff. Like, we talked about the characters. The remake didn't give us much to work with.
They're just completely two different films, so it's really hard to make comparisons because the whole thing's different. I mean, the music, maybe?
Maybe.
I just remember that the original Point Break had, it was L.A., early 90s, right? So you had a bunch of the L.A. hair metal playing at a lot of the parties and just in the background of scenes. And I know there's a lot of music played in the remake, too, like during some of the action sequences. Like the opening motorcycle thing, there was definitely some song being played and okay songs that were kind of forgettable, and nothing really stood out, I guess, in the remake. All that stood out to me was the LA hair metal in the original.
I will give the remake, because you did start talking about music. There's a couple interesting little cameos in the movie that happened. Steve Aoki is at the big party sequence. I think there's probably a ton of famous extreme sports people that were in the film. I guess that's it, actually. I thought I was going somewhere with that, but no, we're done. Steve Aoki's in the movie.
Steve Aoki's okay, but he's no Anthony Kiedis.
That's true. Anthony Kiedis, like, actually being a part of the movie, like, actually, like, driving some action. It was pretty freaking cool, man.
Oh, yeah, and I like the music during the action sequences in the original, too. I said before, the chase sequence when he's chasing Swayze down L.A. through houses and everything, I thought that music was perfect. So I really enjoyed the soundtrack during those action sequences.
No, absolutely. And like you said, it fit in with the timeline. It lets you know what era you're dealing with what music you're hearing. And it's a very LA movie, which is a very strong point of the original film. As you mentioned earlier, you know where you are. It's a Hollywood type movie. Everyone's a surfer bro, and they talk about LA and surfer culture, and it's part of the movie. It flavors the film throughout, whereas this remake, who knows where they are? They're in France, they're over here, and they're not tied to anything, so the audience doesn't get a connection to any of the places they actually go.
It was really confusing because it was like, are they in France still? Are they back in America? I thought they were back in America one time because the FBI guy was there, but no, I guess the head of the FBI came to France. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
That happens.
Who knows?
So it was just really confusing where they were. And I guess if you're going to try to pay attention, you're just going to be upset. So you don't really have to worry where they are. They're just going to another location, do another extreme stunt. Don't mind where they are.
That's it. I don't know if I got much else, unless you can think of something, man.
I'm looking through my notes of the other movies that I wrote, and I think that's it. I think we're there, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I just have in my notes, I hate this movie. This movie's too long. Why are they doing this? God, that sucks. I couldn't stop laughing when Jeff died.
Wow, it's like you're reading my notes. It's like I just sat there and certain point, I couldn't be bothered. I'd rather do anything else, man. I could like go do my taxes or something. Like, who cares? Which is a shame because at the end of the day, it is a movie about extreme sports and there are extreme action sequences. I think what we're learning about movies again is that you need a plot. That's important. But you really do need characters to make you care about the action. As absurd as the original Italian Job was when we watched it, Michael Caine's character was he was endearing and you wanted to kind of see him win. And if you don't want to see your characters win, you don't care whether they win or lose. So why are you watching the movie in the first place? I think this remake completely missed the mark there.
All right, so let's give our final verdicts then, Reggie.
Oh boy.
I think I know where you're going with this, but let's just say it out loud. Should they have remade Point Break?
Well, Dan, in a twist of fate, they didn't remake Point Break, so it doesn't matter. No, this movie shouldn't have, whether it was intended to be a Point Break or not, it should not have been filmed as a Point Break movie. I could see some other world where this movie could have existed and I could have been okay with it, but not this one. Not how it ended. I
had issues with the original, like we said. There's a lot of plot points that don't make sense, character motivations that are questionable, but the remake is not a Point Break movie. It's, like we said before, they made something else, then somebody shoehorned the idea that let's make it a Point Break movie to get more butts in seats.
Yeah.
In the original Point Break, like you said, it's stupid, it's absurd, but you care about these characters. You know, Point Break, the stars are Swayze and Keanu Reeves, right? In the remake, the stars are the stunts.
Right.
That's all you really care about. You don't care about these characters. You don't care about their motivations. I didn't really care about anything. And stunts are cool to look at, but there's no tension there. There's no suspense, really. It's pretty to look at, but there's not a lot of substance there.
Right.
This is not a Point Break movie. They did not remake Point Break. They shouldn't have called it Point Break. They should have just stuck with whatever they had originally. No, you don't need to see this movie. They shouldn't have made this and called it Point Break. They should have stuck with whatever they had in mind and just went with that route. Come up with their own extreme sports franchise. But calling it Point Break, big mistake. Shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, it's a movie that's trying to shine a spotlight on extreme sports. That's why he's getting so technical with defining it, poly-extreme athletes and talking about the Ozaki 80. One of the mountains that they potentially could have climbed was the same one from the documentary Free Solo. So it's like there's a lot of like inside baseball of like extreme sports. There's a lot of like real aspects of extreme sports, which is cool. So do that movie, and even if you don't get as many people, I think the people that like extreme sports would cling to that. Whereas the people that wanted to see Point Break wanted to see Point Break, and this wasn't it. And I think it just ultimately hurts whatever they were going for originally. So, unfortunate.
If I may quote one of the characters from the original, this new movie is just young, dumb, and full of cum.
You got an asshole shortage. Apparently not.
Apparently not. It's so good. You can quote that movie all day because it's good, character driven.
Yep. Oh well. At least we got to watch the original Point Break again.
Yeah, that was a nice little treat. It was definitely better than I remembered. Like I said, you go for the characters and then you stay for the action.
Absolutely.
You can't ask for anything more in those types of movies.
Absolutely, and it's the type of movie that does things well that you wouldn't expect. Like, it's no Heat, but like the way they shoot some of the bank robberies and like you said, that foot chase, you're starting to touch on some of the elements that make movies like that great. So they do a good job with a lot of different elements, whether it's surfing, bank heists, or chase sequences. Well done.
Yeah, I mean, Catherine Bigelow, the director, she's a future Oscar winner for The Hurt Locker. Wife of James Cameron at the time. She knew what she was doing.
Yeah. And I don't think anyone could have captured that bromance the way that she did in that film. All right.
Okay, let's figure out what we should do next.
All right.
Bedazzled?
Huh. Bedazzled, huh?
Let's do Bedazzled. A little bit of Satan. The devil.
I am going to not talk about it because I already have opinions and I'm not going to say any until the next movie. But yeah, Bedazzled. Okay.
I haven't seen the original, so this will be cool.
Yeah, I also have not seen the original, but like I said, I'm not going to talk about the remake. We'll save that for the next episode.
Sounds good. Should we sign off here?
I'm Reggie Parker. You can find me at RP Comedy or rpcomedy.com.
I'm Dan Bulick. You can find me at Console Wars Guys or youtube.com/Console Wars for some retro gaming goodness. Alright, and this has been another episode of Retro vs. Remake.